Hello and welcome to my tutorial. My name is Stephen Hansen Hackman. This tutorial is about Twitter sentiment on AWS serverless pipeline. In essentially, this is going to use an AWS serverless engineering pipeline to analyze Twitter sentiment for selected Twitter handles. The agenda for this project is as follows. We're first of all going to have a brief introduction about the project. Secondly, I'm going to explain some key concepts. Then I'll go into the project demo, and finally, I will verify the result together with you. Now let's start with the first item on the agenda, the project introduction. Now this is essentially the serverless engineering pipeline I'm trying to design, and this is a pipeline that was implemented by Noah Gift in his pragmatic AI labs, and I'm going to use it to analyze Twitter sentiment. So as you can see here, we have a couple of items here on this slide. The pipeline is essentially going to involve, um, let's say this six or seven, let me say um, seven tools or seven items to work through. First of all, I'm going to create a producer lambda, and that is triggered actually by a CloudWatch timer. And the producer lambda reads data from DynamoDB. This DynamoDB is going to store information about the Twitter handles that I want to do the sentiment on. For example, it's going to have a table. DynamoDB is a NoSQL database, and it's going to have a table that has the names of the handles in them. For example, you can have um, um, Barack Obama's handle. You can have any other person's any valid Twitter handle over here in the table. I'm going to show you all that. And as the producer reads information from the Dynamo table, it also uses the simple queue service tool in AWS to now write these DynamoDB entries into SQS, or the simple queue service. Then there is going to be a consumer lambda that essentially consumes the information or uses the information in the SQS queue, that is, uses the names of the Twitter handles in the SQS queues and feeds it into some code which I've created that basically make API calls to Twitter and then do sentiment analysis on the test on those Twitter tests inside this AWS comprehend model here, and finally write the results on these. The results are going to be CSV files. Write them into an S3 bucket. So that is the high overview of the project. So as you can see in this, we have different kind of terminologies used here, as well as different kind of AWS tools. Um, I'm going to explain a couple of them, and for the rest of them, actually, we are going to use them. So I'm going to explain explain them as we use them. Now, serverless computing is a kind of computing where the cloud service provider um, handles all the things such as creating of spinning off instances or computers for you, and then all that you as a user do is to go ahead and create your functions or create your code to develop the application that you want to. And this is exactly what I'm going to demonstrate in this project here. We are going to use serverless tools such as the Cloud9 and the AWS Lambda to actually spin up a project without us worrying about creating, let's say, computing instances and or VM machines over the cloud to actually run them. Amazon is going to automatically spin off instances for me as I begin to create a Cloud9 project. So in a nutshell, that is what serverless computing is. It is a quicker way for development. Developers can focus all their effort and energy into testing and to developing their code. And then um, from Cloud9, Amazon, AWS has made it very easy for you to actually deploy your code into AWS Lambda. Um, Cloud9, I would say, is AWS's IDE for doing real development, and whereas the Lambda is really a place where you could deploy your application. That is essentially what serverless computing means. Now, all the other things here I'm going to talk about, like the CloudWatch timer, the AWS Comprehend, which is Amazon's tool for doing sentiment analysis and topic modeling, and the S3 is Amazon storage, which allows you to store files or data into buckets. DynamoDB, as I already mentioned, is um, a NoSQL database. It's similar to creating Python dictionaries and adding entries into them. And a simple queue service is basically a place where you could feed a stream of data into and read from it. The Lambda is a tool Amazon uses for creating functions and handling events in your application. And a CloudWatch timer basically allows you to um, monitor events on AWS. It also enables you to trigger events. Um, Maybe if you want to schedule an event to run every minute or every hour, you can use a CloudWatch timer to essentially do that. So now we've talked about agenda items 1 and 2, and now we're going to go right into the project demo. Now, let's begin the project. So to begin, I'm going to start my project with creating a Cloud9 environment. So I go to my AWS Management Console, as you see here, and I type Cloud9 and basically click Cloud9. And then it gives you the option to create a new environment. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and create a new environment. I'm going to call it Twitter Sentiment Pipeline. You could put a short description here. A serverless data, it's a serverless engineering pipeline for analyzing Twitter sentiments. And for this, I'm just going to keep it as it is. I'm going to keep the instances as it is. And so as you can see, as I said, once we are doing this, AWS is going to spin off all these things in the environment for me. And instance down, and I'm going to keep everything as it is here. And I just create the environment. So it's going to take some time for the environment to be created. Perfect. AWS is finished spinning up our Cloud9 environment. So as it stands now, we are ready to begin our coding. So as you can see here, it basically gives you a bash command line that you could write your code and do everything that you want to do. Since I'm using a Linux, Amazon Linux instance, so we have a bash environment to work with. Now, first of all, what I'll first of all do is to try and um, create SSH keys to actually clone an empty Git repository that I have created for this project that is going to store my project on GitHub. So I'm going to do that. This -t RSA, And I'm saying it's going to ask us to where we're going to save it. We're going to save it at the same location here, and it's going to ask for a passphrase. So I enter a passphrase for it. So perfect. I have SSH key generated for this. Now let me just get the signature of the SSH keys. It's stored in this location, so I'll just copy it and I cut to get the content. Now copy this and then navigate to my Twitter project here, and I have to add it to the SSH keys. So I have to go to settings and I go to SSH keys, and I can add a new SSH key over here. I can call it, for example, this, and paste it here. So my SSH key is added. I can just go back to my project again. Now let's now clone into my project to get my project over here. So I do git clone, and I have to get the SSH path for the project. I copy it here, and then I clone the project. I say yes. I say yes. What did it say? Git clone. I sure want to. I say yes. Oh, it should be yes, not that. So it needs the passphrase. There you go. So I have my project cloned into Cloud9 over here. As you can see, that is the project. So I can go right into it, cd and Twitter, and there you go. I am in the project over here. So once I'm in this project, what I'll do is to go to this tab here, AWS panel tab over here, and create a Lambda function for this project. And this Lambda function is going to be the piece of it that I earlier on referred to as the producer is going to read record from DynamoDB and then put those records into SQS. So you just do that by clicking the Lambda icon here, and I'm going to call it Twitter Sentiment Consumer, and navigate. I have to choose the runtime. I'm going to use Python 3.6. Choose empty Python. Go to Nest. I'm not going to create a trigger here, so I go Nest. And then this is very important. This is where you must assign a role, and a role is going to provide a set of permissions that you can use to run this Lambda function. So you can choose an existing role. I've already created an existing role, so this is the name of the role, and I can go to Nest and finish. Now it has created that Lambda function for me. Now assuming that perfect, assuming that I wanted to create a role, I can still do it. I just want to show you because I chose already created one. I can still do it here by going to the services, do IAM, and in IAM you can actually create a new role. So you create roles and then you say create role, and it's going to ask you the type of entity, trusted entity. What I want is a Lambda um, entity or a Lambda role. So I'm going to create Lambda, allow Lambda function to call AWS services on your behalf. Then you go to permissions. Here you could select one of the permissions here. For example, you could select administrator access if it's just for testing purposes, or you can select any one, or you can create a new policy. So this is how you go about creating a role. But I really don't want to create a role here, but that is the steps that I use to create the role. So I'll cancel it for now and not create a role. So interesting. So now, as you can see here, I have my Lambda resource created over here, and um, I will need to now add code to this Lambda. Now I already have some code that I want um, to actually use in this case. So I'll just copy that and talk a little bit about the code, and so that we all see. So I just copy and paste my code here. So as you can see in this code here, it's the main purpose of the code is to help you to connect from Dynamo to the DynamoDB to SQS, and it takes some parameters. For example, it uses some models. Boto3 is already comes with AWS installations and JSON, and Boto3 helps you to do call resources on AWS and basically call resources and do any kind of programming stuff you want to do on AWS, be it sentiment analysis and be it any kind of thing you want to do actually. And so as you can see here, I'm using Boto3 to make calls to my database. So I have Boto3 resource.dynamodb calling the database DynamoDB. And then I have already created a table called tweet handles. I'm going to show you to you. I'm also going to show you how to create another one. And I have a queue, which is the simple queue services, AWS simple queue services. I already created called tweet handle queue, and and the SQS client is also called. And I have a couple of other models to use, the login and the JSON logger to do that. So essentially what this does is to scan my DynamoDB table, and then create an SQS message essentially to pull those data from the Dynamo table into my SQS queue that I created over here, and then it's going to then also have a function to actually send it out, because you remember in the workflow, as I can show you over here again, the workflow here, it's this producer lambda has ability to send out um, the the information it got from the Dynamo table into SQS. So it has a function to send emissions out to the SQS queue, and then the every lambda function must have a lambda handler. So that takes care of the event that are, for example, we are going to trigger this lambda consumer with a trigger function um, from CloudWatch. So it's going to take the event and take the message and send it out, send the emissions to SQS. So that is essentially what this lambda function is doing over here. Now, because I already created my DynamoDB tables and tweet handle, I'm going to show you where those stuff are. I'm going to also explain to you how you can create a new one. Now, if you want to create a table, a Dynamo table, you essentially come to the services in AWS and do DynamoDB, which is a managed NoSQL database. And as you can see here, I have already created a table. Let's look at how this table looks like. So this table, as I have here, have Twitter handles. So I call the table name tweet handles, and it has a field called GUID that essentially stores record for the Twitter handles. And so I have Twitter handles for Barack Obama, NFL draft, POTUS, Fluffy Guy, Jeff Dunham, Play New World, and UNC Charlotte. Um, so this is what the Lambda function is going to read this information, each of these into a queue, into the simple queue service in AWS, and then I'm going to consume this information, each of them to um, do API calls to Twitter, and then get sentiment of each of the tests for these that I get. So that is it. But assuming you want to create a new table, and you could actually come to the dashboard and say create table. You give the name of the table, so I'll call it test just to show you, and you can give it a key, a unique key. Every table must have a unique key, so I'll call it GUID again, and then you could just say so the type here is string, but it can have binary or number, and then you could actually do create. So that creates a table test for me. Takes a little bit to spin off. Right, so now the table is created. So as you can see here, I have another table added test here, and I have now it's basically empty. It has no records in this, but it has a column with empty records. So what I can do is to say create item. That is going to be the records in it. And so here, this is a NoSQL database, so it basically allows you to create add object in the form of a dictionary. So give it as a string and the value. So we can call this, let's say, what can we call this? Um, let's say PS4, for example, if PS4 is a handle on Twitter, and we could actually add, you can append more rows to this if you want to, and say maybe another column you want to add is going to be a number. You could call the field, um, let's say cost, and you call it, let's say it costs PS4 costs, let's say $350. So maybe you call it that way. So this way, when you save, we have a table with two columns and a row, PS4, and the cost is $350. So that is essentially how you create DB tables in AWS. Now, I'm not going to use this. I'm actually going to use the tweet handles that I created. Now, assuming you want to create a simple queue service, you do SQS, simple queue service, on the console, and you can now navigate to that. I already told you I have this created here, but then if you want to create a new queue, you can just do create queue, standard queue, and we have different types, the first in, first out queue and the standard queue. You can read more about it if you're interested. And then you give the queue a name. So you say test queue, and then you could do create queue. So it's created. Basically now it's created. Now let's see if I want to send a message in this queue, I could do a test. Let's say test, and see if the key is going to appear in the queue. That's another one, and say another test. Okay, so this queue has messages there. If you refresh, you see it has received 2 messages. And if you want to look at what is inside the queue, you could basically come here, view delete messages, the queue, and do start polling. It's going to tell you all the messages in this queue over here. It's taking some time to poll actually, and or pull the data, pull the message that has been through it. So essentially, that's how you create a queue, and messages are going to be populated in the queue from any source that you point it to. So that is the queue for you over here. So now the queue and the tables already created. Let's go back to our Cloud environment, and as you can see here, I have actually created this Lambda for this Cloud9 project, but then I need to do a few installations to add packages or modules to this. For example, the Python JSON logger need to be installed, and I have to add that to our installation over here. So let's see what is here. So probably I have to go back to this part here and see I now have my Lambda project created over here, so I can cd into that Twitter sentiment, and it comes also with a virtual environment, so that makes it pretty cool. So let's navigate to where this Lambda is. So cd Twitter. So this is essentially where our Lambda function, this file as you see here, is. I don't want to be here for the installation. I want to be one folder away from it. So this should be the right folder. Now I can activate my, it comes with a virtual environment, so I can actually activate my virtual environment doing source UMV activated. So my virtual environment is activated. Now in this particular location, now I will have to install things that I need. Boto already comes with it. JSON is already a model there, but I need to install the Python JSON logger for this to work very well. So that's what I'm going to do. I believe that is the only package I need. I believe so. Okay, so let me just install pip3 install, and I do the name of the package I want to install, Python JSON logger, and the target I wanted to install it in this exact same folder location that I have. So I do a dot, and then it said it's installed that. So let's see if the package is there. Awesome. So as you can see, it's installed in this folder here. Let's see if I need to install Boto. I believe Boto is installed. Let's just see. It's going to tell us already installed Boto 3. Boto 3. All right, so it installed Boto 3 also. Awesome. Cool. I believe JSON should be there. Let's see which JSON. All right, so there's no JSON. All right, so let's do pip install JSON. If that is the name of the. All right, let me look for the installation for JSON, but I believe it should have it. It should already come with it, so there's no need to actually worry about that. All right, so let's do pip. Let me upgrade my packages. Yeah, JSON comes with it. It comes with typical Python installation, so there's no need to install it. So we have all the things we need to install for this Lambda function or Lambda project. Now, before we deploy this Lambda project to AWS Lambda, we could do a simple test or simple run of this to see. So I can come here to the Lambda project and do run local. As of now, I don't really need any input. It just everything is defined over here, so I could just try and do a test run and see if it's going to run successfully and give me some information if there is anything in the queue. So perfect. So as you can see, it found some items in my queue, and as you can see, some of the items it found it found the handles basically, and some of the handles are UNC Charlotte as I showed you, and it found things like yeah, all the things I put in my DynamoDB NoSQL table. It was able to use that information and read that and basically put it into the queue. So with this, I'm satisfied that this is good. I can actually go ahead and deploy this Lambda project to AWS Cloud9. So this is what I'm going to do. I do deploy. Take some time to deploy. Okay, so it's done deploying. Now I can go ahead and now go into Lambda. So let's come to Lambda here. Do I have Lambda? Yeah, you can just select Lambda from here and it takes you to Lambda. So this is, I have a set of other projects I've done, but this is um, what I just created here. Cloud9, yeah, this is the Lambda 90 seconds ago, and I can just go into the Lambda function here. Yeah, so as you can see, it's loads my project into Lambda, and now this Lambda is really not. Is that the right one? Let me go back and see. How did I call this? This should have been called the producer. I call the consumer, but it's okay. We can use it. You can use it. So I'm going to create and add a trigger, and this trigger is going to use the CloudWatch event, and basically you can create a new rule or you can use existing rules. I already have a rule here, but I will just go ahead and create a new one. I'm not going to use that one though. Create a new rule, and the rule is just like something that is going to trigger the lambda. Going to trigger the lambda, and so CloudWatch is going to do a timer and say, okay, after every 1 hour, after every 5 minutes, after every, let's say every day, just trigger the lambda function. That is essentially what this does. So you can give it a rule name, let's say rule 1, and then you could give it a rule description, triggers lambda daily, and then you use the expression, and the expression example of the expression is down there, so you could do rate 1 day and enable trigger, and then you can add it. I don't want to do that, but just adding the trigger is going to create it, right? I don't want to do that, so I just want to cancel and go to add trigger again and use what I already created. So I have here 1 minute. This rule here triggers triggers a lambda every minute. So a lambda here is created, and it's going to be triggered. So we could go back to, let me see, let's go back to our console, AWS console here, and go to our SQS. So I can, as you can see, that there's even data coming into this queue already. So if I refresh it, it should be receiving data. I think it already pulled all the 7 records into the queue. Well, let's give it some time. Maybe it's going to push more data so that we see the changes that are happening. So as you can see now, we have 10 items in this tweet handle queue, and we can actually go to this queue and view messages in them. Start pulling, and you can see it's pulled all the stuff in my queue. I mean, it's going to keep on pulling whatever is in it over and over again until you actually delete or clear them. At this stage, we just keep it as it is right now, and you pull all this information here. So at this stage, we are very confident that the first piece of our pipeline is working, and the first piece is this piece here. This whole piece here, the Lambda token to pulling records from DynamoDB and then writing them into SQS queue, that is working. So we're going to go to the next phase, which is the consumer Lambda, that is going to consume the information from the queue and do sentiment analysis using AWS Comprehend, and then finally write it into S3. So now I'm going to create another Lambda project or Lambda function, That is actually going to do the consumption, I mean, reading the data from my queue and then performing sentiment analysis on the data pools from Twitter. So I just go ahead again here and click on this. I mistakenly called the other one consumer, so I'm going to intentionally say actual consumer tweets, something like that, right? Lambda. And then just go ahead and do next. Use the Python 3.6 environment. Choose an existing row. I'm going to use the row that I created earlier on and then finish it. So as you can see, that has also been created. And then in order not to confuse ourselves with two lambda function, let me close the other one. So this is the second piece of the project here. This lambda here, that's what I'm creating right now, the consumer lambda. And then I have code already. I already have some code that I'm going to use in it. I'm going to copy and bring it here and explain what the code does. So as you can see that this code here does a couple of things. It's definitely using some libraries which are new. For example, the TweetPy. The TweetPy is going to basically help me connect to Twitter and pull data. And then it's going to it does a couple of things actually. So many things it's doing here. It makes an SQL connection and gets the queue names, the queue name that I have that I want to use. So as I was saying, it basically goes through this and makes a connection to the queue, and then it has a function. Yeah, so that's the connection to the queue, and it then has another piece of code here that only does a count of the items in the queue and has a function to delete messages in the queue after it's processed them. Otherwise, the queue is going to keep on growing and growing. And then I have a code here that does pull data from Twitter and basically create an API connection to Twitter based on some keys that I got from Twitter. And then essentially loops through each of the Twitter handles and create a data frame for each handle and the tweets that it got from it and returns the data frame. And then this function here creates sentiments by using the AWS comprehend tool or function to detect sentiment in each of those Twitter handle tests that I get. And finally, I have an apply sentiment here that applies that sentiment analysis to the data frame to create a new column out of it. And then function to write to S3 storage so that I can save my output. As I said earlier on here, I'm going to save it into S3 bucket. And then definitely there should be a Lambda handler function in every AWS Lambda function. So the Lambda handler actually does the actual job, the heavy lifting, and it goes through each event that it pulls, that it gets from the queue, because we are going to create a trigger to the Lambda to talk to the simple queue service, and so it's going to get for every event that it receives from the simple queue service, it's going to get the context of the data and look to the data and get the necessary information, the Twitter handles that we are looking for, and do a couple of things, extract data from the Twitter handles, and then go ahead and do some logging, definitely. And then it's here we kind of do the sentiment, we kind of pull the tweets. We put a tweet using each Twitter handle or the other Twitter handles that we have, and then finally we will write the output to the S3 bucket. So with this, I've actually set up a bucket already, and the name of the bucket is Twitter handle sentiment. But assuming you want to create a new bucket, you could come here and do here. You go to S3, and as you can see, you can go to bucket. I have this bucket created already. It's an empty bucket currently. But then if you want to create a new bucket, you just go to here, create bucket. You get a name of the bucket, test bucket or something, and then you just say create bucket. Oh, it already exists. So let me test bucket sentiment or something. Let's see if that says this. Okay, so that does not exist. So yeah, so the bucket is good. It's very simple. Some 2 or 3 clicks and you have a bucket created. And the bucket can help you store data basically. So if you look into the bucket here, you could add a you could upload directly from your computer, or you could create a folder to add, or could create folders as well and do other things you want to do with a normal, how a normal storage should behave. So that is it for the bucket. I don't need it, so I'll just go ahead and delete this bucket. What are the actions to do that? All right, so yeah, just click on it and delete the bucket. Test bucket, test box sentiment. Yep, and delete it. So it's gone. So as you can see, I've deleted the bucket. Now let's go back to our environment here. So there are a couple of things we need to do. We need to first of all see if that project has been added. So let's go to that Lambda function. So let me cd into it. Great. So I need to do a couple of things. First of all, let me just source into the virtual environment. All right. Now at this level here, let's see where the Lambda is. It is here, and I want to go back one folder and then do my installation here. A couple of things I need to install into this project as well. I definitely need to install the Python JSON logger, and I also need to install the pandas and the tweepy. So I'm going to do all those installations here. So I'm going to do pip. Yep. So I'm going to do pip3 install. Let me say pandas, and I said the target should be the current folder. Take some time. Okay, so pandas is installed. I'll go ahead and install others. So I need to install the Python JSON logger. Installed in this directory here. It's installed. I need to install my tweepy. All right, tweepy is also installed quickly. So I think I have everything that I need for this project to work. So I have everything I need. Tweepy, pandas. So I think I'm in a good shape right now to save this and then deploy it to AWS Lambda environment. So I'll come here and then quickly have to deploy it. Say deploy. Take some time. Great. So it's done deploying. Let's quickly go back to our Lambda environment and see it on the functions and see we have an actual consumer 39 seconds ago. So when we click on it, it is here and it's ready to add a trigger to it. So now I need to add a trigger to it. So as you can see, in our design here, I've done this piece here, the consumer lambda, and it has code to do the AWS component I showed you. It has also code to actually put files into S3 bucket. So this piece is also done, but I just need a trigger to a trigger from event trigger from SQS to this, so that it actually checks the SQS queue and see if there is data in it, and then reads the data, feeds it into the Lambda function over here. Does the AWS component sentiment analysis, and then finally puts the files into S3 here. So that is what we are left to do. So I'll quickly create a trigger. So this trigger is going to be created on the simple queue service, or the SQS. And then we have to choose the queue name. The queue name is the tweet handle queue, and say batch size is going to pull 10 tweets or 10 records at a time, and you say add trigger. So the trigger is added, and now as it stands right now, I believe things are happening. So let's see if things are happening. Let's see from our queue over here if we have movement of data. You should see some changes. So as you can see, there are 50 messages in flight, 83 available. So data is actually feeding data from the queue into the consumer. The consumer is working on this, and as we go on, it's going to feed on it until the queue is actually empty, or there are new messages that come in. So now the queue is empty. It got some new. The queue is empty now. So now my queue is empty, and it's processed all these items in the queue. Now let's see if we can actually find out if the files have been created in S3, in my S3 bucket. Let's give some time. So great. So as you can see, my S3 bucket has been populated with the files I created for all those Twitter handles that I generated, and essentially um, giving me sentiment analysis on some of the tests or top 20 tweets in these particular handles over here. So let's look at this one here. I think it has a couple of them. So we could come here and download it, and let's see how the file looks like. So now we're on the last stage. We are trying to verify our result here. And as you can see, this is the handles, Fluffy, NFL Draft, and POTUS. And we have the tweets that came in, some of them. And then the sentiment is positive for Fluffy Guy. He's a comedian. I'm not surprised it's a positive sentiment. And NFL Draft is a neutral sentiment. And then we have the POTUS that had all these tests, and the overall test is a positive sentiment. And then NFL. So this is essentially what I set out to do, and so to show you how easy it is to actually spin up a project, a serverless project, and with AWS Cloud9 and Lambda, and use other AWS features such as the CloudWatch timer and the simple queue service and the NoSQL database DynamoDB, and to really push data into S3. So assuming you were running like a restaurant chain and you want to see how what people are saying about your competitors in your area, you could probably do something simple and quickly as this on AWS to analyze sentiment, top 20 sentiment of your customers. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you, and hit the like button if you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you.